As a neurologist, I must warn you about a danger that grows silently during the scorching heat of summer. For older adults, heat is not just uncomfortable, it can be deadly. When temperatures climb toward 40 degrees Celsius, the body of an elderly person can no longer cool itself as efficiently as it once did. The heart is forced to pump harder, blood vessels strain, and the brain becomes vulnerable to oxygen loss. This is why stroke cases often rise during heat waves, especially in those already living with high blood pressure. Diabetes, high cholesterol, or heart disease. Many believe heat only causes fatigue or mild dehydration. But for the aging body, it can push the delicate balance over the edge, leading to sudden collapse, loss of movement, slurred speech, or even death within minutes. The truth is that every minute of overheating adds stress to the nervous system, increases clot formation, and disrupts blood flow to the brain. Stroke does not wait, and in the heat, it can strike swiftly without warning. Yet this outcome is not inevitable. By learning the signs, understanding why the elderly are so vulnerable, and taking protective steps, many tragedies can be prevented. In this video, I will explain how extreme temperatures can trigger strokes, how to recognize early warning signals, and what you can do to safeguard yourself or your loved ones during dangerous heat waves. Before we begin, I want to hear from you. Have you or someone you know ever felt dizzy, weak, or faint during very hot days? Share your story in the comments, because your experience may help others recognize the danger and take action in time. 1. What happens to the brain during a stroke in extreme heat? To understand why hot weather is so dangerous for older adults, you need to see what happens inside the body, and especially inside the brain. The human brain depends on a constant supply of oxygen and nutrients delivered by blood. In normal conditions, the body regulates its temperature at around 37 degrees Celsius by sweating, expanding blood vessels near the skin, breathing faster, and increasing the heart's workload to push blood outward. In a young, healthy person, these mechanisms are strong, but in the elderly, they are often weakened. When heat rises to extreme levels, the body struggles to cool itself. Blood thickens as fluids are lost through sweat. Vessels stiffen, and the heart cannot keep up with the demand. The brain, which is extremely sensitive to any drop in blood supply, becomes the first organ to suffer. Within minutes of reduced circulation, brain cells start to die. During a heat-related stroke, two different scenarios may unfold. In some cases, dehydration and increased clotting lead to ischemic stroke, where a blood clot blocks a vessel and cuts off oxygen. In other cases, high blood pressure combined with fragile artery walls causes hemorrhagic stroke, in which a vessel bursts and bleeds directly into brain tissue. Both are catastrophic, and both can be accelerated by extreme heat. Scientists estimate that nearly 2 million neurons are lost every minute that blood flow is interrupted. That means a delay of even half an hour can erase years of brain function. Older adults with existing conditions such as hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, or high cholesterol are especially vulnerable because their vessels are already compromised. For them, stepping outside on a day above 39 or 40 degrees Celsius is like placing an enormous burden on a weakened system. The brain simply cannot cope with the sudden surge in pressure and loss of oxygen. This is why heat waves are often followed by a spike in hospital admissions for stroke. The outcome is not only death but also severe disability for those who survive, including paralysis, speech loss, and memory decline. Understanding this process should serve as a warning. Extreme heat does not just exhaust the body, it destabilizes the delicate systems that keep the brain alive. Prevention means avoiding unnecessary exposure, staying hydrated, and recognizing that once symptoms appear, time is the most critical factor. Knowing how the brain responds to heat stress helps us appreciate why stroke risk rises so sharply during the summer and why urgent protective measures are required for older adults. 2. Why heat waves increase stroke risk in older adults. When temperatures rise sharply, everyone feels uncomfortable. But for older adults, the risks extend far beyond heat exhaustion. The aging body loses much of its natural ability to regulate temperature. In youth, the nervous system quickly signals the sweat glands to cool the body. Blood vessels expand efficiently to release heat, and the heart responds with strength to move blood toward the skin. With age, each of these systems slows or weakens. Sweat production declines, vessels become stiff, and the heart is often already under stress from high blood pressure or heart disease. This means that during a heat wave, older adults are simply unable to cool themselves as effectively as younger people. As core body temperature rises, the heart races, circulation struggles, and the brain is deprived of oxygen. This is the perfect storm for stroke. Heat increases the thickness of blood as fluid is lost through sweat, making clots more likely to form. At the same time, dehydration reduces the volume of blood circulating, which forces the heart to pump harder against narrower vessels. For someone already living with hypertension, diabetes, or high cholesterol, this extra burden can quickly overwhelm fragile arteries. It is not only the temperature itself, but also sudden changes that raise the risk. Studies show that when outdoor temperatures swing by as little as 5 degrees Celsius in a short period, stroke admissions can rise by as much as 6%. Rapid fluctuations stress the vascular system, triggering dangerous imbalances in blood pressure and clotting. This is why older adults often suffer strokes not just on the hottest days, but during any abrupt weather change. Another reason heat waves are so deadly is the accumulation of chronic illness. Many older adults already live with conditions such as heart disease, narrowed arteries, or previous strokes. In these individuals, the margin for error is extremely small. Even mild dehydration or modest overheating can be enough to tip the balance. The danger is further increased by common medications such as diuretics or blood pressure drugs, which may alter fluid balance and make dehydration worse. The brain itself is highly sensitive to temperature. As body heat rises above 39 degrees Celsius, brain proteins and enzymes begin to break down. Neurons, already vulnerable to low oxygen, lose their ability to function properly. This leads to confusion, dizziness, slurred speech, or sudden weakness, all of which may be mistaken for simple fatigue, but are in fact early signs of stroke. Without rapid intervention, permanent damage follows. The lesson is clear. Older adults face unique and serious vulnerabilities during heat waves. Their natural cooling systems are weaker. Their medical conditions amplify the risk. And sudden changes in weather can trigger catastrophic events. That is why heat is not just an inconvenience, but a silent and deadly trigger for stroke. Families and caregivers must treat high temperature days as a warning to take extra precautions, because prevention during extreme heat can be the difference between life and sudden loss. 3. Warning signs of heat-related stroke. One of the most dangerous aspects of stroke during heat waves is how quickly the symptoms can appear and how easily they can be mistaken for ordinary exhaustion. Many older adults, when feeling weak or dizzy in the heat, assume they are simply tired or dehydrated. In reality, these may be the first signals that the brain is losing blood supply and oxygen. Recognizing the difference is critical, because every minute of delay allows millions of neurons to die. The first warning sign is sudden weakness or numbness, often affecting one side of the body. An arm may feel heavy, a leg may refuse to move, or the face may suddenly droop. These changes reflect damage in the brain regions that control movement and sensation. Another common sign is difficulty speaking or understanding language. Words may sound slurred, sentences may be jumbled, or the person may be unable to repeat a simple phrase. In hot weather, this is often overlooked, dismissed as fatigue, but it must be treated as a red flag. Vision problems also occur. A person may suddenly lose sight in one eye, experience blurred vision, or see double. This happens when the blood flow to the parts of the brain controlling eyesight is interrupted. Balance issues are another clue. Dizziness, a staggering, or loss of coordination can all signal that a stroke is developing. These symptoms are especially dangerous when an older adult is outdoors in the heat, as falls can cause additional injuries. Severe headache is another important warning sign. If the pain is sudden and intense, unlike anything felt before, and especially if it is accompanied by nausea or vomiting, it may indicate a hemorrhagic stroke where a blood vessel has ruptured. Heat itself can cause headaches, but when they appear suddenly and severely in an older adult, stroke must always be considered. Confusion or sudden difficulty understanding what is happening is also a common sign. An older person may appear dazed, struggle to follow instructions, or act unusually quiet. Family members and caregivers should treat this as an emergency rather than assuming it is simple heat fatigue. Some warning signs may last only a few minutes and then disappear. This is known as a transient ischemic attack, or mini stroke. In the heat, these episodes are particularly dangerous because they often precede a major stroke within days. Too many people ignore them because they feel normal again after a short time. But this false recovery should not be trusted. If any of these symptoms appear, even briefly, it is vital to act immediately. Call emergency services without delay. Do not wait to see if the condition improves. During heat waves, when stroke risk is already elevated, hesitation can cost lives. Recognizing these warning signs and treating them seriously gives the best chance of survival and recovery. Stroke in the heat is not just an accident of weather. It is a predictable crisis with clear signals. Knowing them may save your life or the life of someone you love. 4. Emergency response and first aid for heat-related stroke. When a stroke strikes during extreme heat, every minute is precious. The brain loses nearly 2 million neurons each minute. Blood flow is interrupted, which means any delay can result in permanent disability or death. The first rule is simple yet often overlooked. Call emergency services immediately. Do not wait to see if symptoms fade. Do not assume the person is only tired or overheated. In the case of stroke, hesitation can be fatal. While waiting for professional help, there are specific steps that can save lives. Place the patient in a safe position. If the person is conscious but weak, and have them lie on their side with the head slightly elevated. This helps maintain airflow and prevents aspiration if nausea or vomiting occurs. If the patient loses consciousness, Laying them on their side ensures that the tongue does not block the airway and that any vomit does not enter the lungs. Never leave the person flat on their back if they are drowsy or unconscious, as this can quickly compromise breathing. Do not attempt to give the person food, water, or medication by mouth. During a stroke, swallowing reflexes are often impaired, and forcing anything into the mouth can cause choking or aspiration, pneumonia. Keep the airway clear, and monitor breathing and pulse while waiting for emergency personnel. If breathing stops, begin basic life support if you are trained. Cooling the patient safely is another important step in the context of extreme heat. Move them to a shaded area. Loosen tight clothing. And use cool damp cloths on the forehead, neck, and armpits. Avoid sudden or extreme cooling, such as immersing the body in ice water, which can shock the system and worsen the condition. The goal is to gently lower body temperature while keeping circulation stable. Family members and caregivers should also gather essential information quickly. Note the time symptoms first appeared, as this is critical for doctors deciding on treatments like clot-dissolving medications, which are only effective within a few hours of onset. Provide medical history, including current medications, heart conditions, diabetes, or previous strokes, to the emergency team. These details can shape immediate treatment decisions. Remain calm but act decisively. Panic can waste valuable time. Assign tasks if others are present. One person calls emergency services. Another prepares identification and health records. And another stays with the patient to monitor changes. Above all, remember that speed is everything. Many patients survive stroke, but are left with severe disabilities because precious minutes were lost at the beginning. Heat-related strokes carry an added risk because caregivers may confuse symptoms with simple overheating or dehydration. Do not make that mistake. Treat every sudden neurological change in hot weather as a stroke until proven otherwise. By acting quickly, positioning the patient safely, cooling gently, and relaying accurate information, you provide the best possible chance of survival and recovery while awaiting professional care. Stroke is a race against time, and in the heat, that race becomes even more urgent. 5. Practical tips to prevent heat-related stroke in older adults. Prevention is always better than emergency treatment, especially when it comes to stroke during extreme heat. The elderly are particularly vulnerable, but with careful planning and consistent habits, the risk can be greatly reduced. The first step is to limit exposure. On very hot days, older adults should avoid going outdoors unless absolutely necessary. If leaving the house is unavoidable, plan activities for early morning or late evening when temperatures are lower. Wear light, breathable clothing, a wide-brimmed hat, and sunglasses to reduce direct heat exposure. Always seek shade when walking and avoid prolonged activity in direct sunlight. Hydration is the next critical element. Older adults often feel less thirsty than younger people, which means dehydration can creep in without warning. Drinking small amounts of water throughout the day is essential. Natural juices, diluted fruit drinks, or light salt solutions can also help replace electrolytes lost through sweat. Be cautious with caffeinated or alcoholic beverages, as they increase fluid loss. A useful habit is to keep a water bottle nearby at all times, as a reminder to sip regularly. Indoor environments must also be managed wisely. Homes should be kept cool with fans, open windows, or air conditioning, but sudden temperature shocks should be avoided. Moving directly from extreme heat outdoors to an air-conditioned room set at very low temperatures can trigger blood vessel constriction and blood pressure spikes. Instead, Keep indoor temperatures moderate and adjust gradually. Rest is equally important. Avoid strenuous activity during peak heat hours. For those who must work outdoors, schedule frequent breaks in shaded or cooler areas. Caregivers should monitor older adults closely, especially those with chronic conditions such as heart disease, diabetes, or hypertension. Any sign of dizziness, fatigue, or confusion should be taken seriously. Nutrition also plays a role. Eating light, balanced meals helps reduce metabolic stress on the body. Fresh fruits, vegetables, and foods rich in water content, such as watermelon or cucumber, assist hydration. Heavy, greasy meals should be avoided as they can increase internal heat production. Medication management is another critical factor. Some drugs, such as diuretics or blood pressure medicines, may increase sensitivity to heat or promote fluid loss. Older adults should consult their physicians about how to safely manage medications during hot weather. Doctors may recommend adjustments or closer monitoring during the summer months. Finally, never underestimate the value of community support. Families, neighbors, and local organizations should check in on elderly individuals who live alone during heat waves. A simple phone call or visit can make the difference between safety and tragedy. Encourage older adults to stay socially connected so that warning signs are noticed quickly and help is available when needed. Prevention is not complicated, but it requires awareness and vigilance. By limiting exposure, staying hydrated, maintaining a safe indoor environment, eating wisely, managing medications, and building strong support networks, the risk of heat-related stroke can be significantly reduced. Each of these measures may seem small, but together they create a powerful shield that protects the brain and preserves life. Doctor's final words. As a neurologist, my final message is both a warning and a call to action. Heat waves are not just uncomfortable weather events. They are silent threats that can push the aging body past its limits and trigger a devastating stroke. For older adults, the ability to regulate temperature, maintain hydration, and keep blood vessels stable is already weakened by age and chronic illness. When extreme heat strikes, these vulnerabilities are exposed, and the brain becomes dangerously fragile. Too often, families dismiss dizziness, weakness, or confusion during hot days as ordinary fatigue. In reality, these may be the earliest signs of a stroke, a crisis that can rob a loved one of speech, movement, or independence within minutes. I urge you not to ignore these signals. Respond immediately. Seek medical care. And remember that time is the most critical factor in protecting brain cells. The good news is that prevention is within reach. By staying hydrated, limiting exposure to the hottest hours, dressing appropriately, eating light, managing medications, and creating support systems for the elderly, many of these tragedies can be avoided. Each choice to prepare for the heat is an investment in safety and longevity. Stroke during heat waves is not inevitable. It is the result of risks left unchecked and warnings ignored. Your awareness and your actions can change that outcome. If you are caring for an older parent, relative, or neighbor, be vigilant on the hottest days. If you are an older adult yourself, take these precautions seriously, because they may save your life. I invite you to share your experiences in the comments. Have you ever noticed dizziness, faintness, or sudden weakness during a heat wave, your story could help others recognize the danger and act before it is too late. Remember, prevention is not about fear. It is about empowerment. Protect yourself and your loved ones. And you will not only reduce the risk of stroke, but also ensure more years of clarity, strength, and independence. The decision to prepare for the heat belongs to you, and it may be one of the most important choices you ever make.